Alrighty, I think we should get started, and hopefully some more will join as we begin our event for today. So, thank you for joining us. My name is Cindy Lamar, and I'd like to introduce you to the event and also introduce you to our two speakers. So, welcome to Financial Planning for LGBTQ plus startups, pre seed and seed companies. In part one of the Founders Financial Management series, we'll focus on financial considerations that new founders and other pre equity raised founders should understand when navigating their personal finances. This discussion will dive into topics that highlight the professionals you want to have in your corner, the importance of cash flow, why you want to build a safety net and protect your legacy, among other personal finance themes relevant to founders. We plan to leave you with actionable steps that can take you to feel powered around your money so you can navigate your founder's journey. We'll be talking with two financial planning experts from Abacus Wealth Partners. Christopher Stroup, MBA, works as an advisor for Abacus Wealth Partners, a fee only independent firm that is a change maker in the finance planning world. A focus on impact and socially responsible investing, diversity and inclusion, and making financial planning accessible. As a member of the LGBTQ community, Christopher is passionate about the intersection of startups, entrepreneurship, and wealth management. And he focuses much of his work on serving the needs of LGBTQ plus members of senior leadership across immersion and Fortune 500 companies. Newly appointed to the Financial Planning Association's Next Gen Executive Committee, he is the first openly gay advisor to be elected to the board, where he will lead diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to build a sense of belonging among all professionals within the industry, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, or other ideologies, while also striving to bring financial planning to traditionally underserved communities that have the most to gain from quality financial advice. When not reading the latest startup updates on Crunchbase, you can find Christopher at the beach playing sand volleyball, subjecting himself to ice water plunges at his favorite social wellness club, reading a book, enjoying a large glass of Malbec, traveling, or catching up with his four older siblings. Excuse me. Laura Morganelli is a certified financial planner at Abacus Wealth Partners. As a female still in a predominantly male dominated industry, Laura is passionate about helping others excel in their own careers and achieve success. Her main goal is to bring a sense of peace to people's financial lives. She enjoys working with and providing guidance to individuals on all aspects of financial planning. Laura enjoys making these topics, which can sometimes feel complex and scary, feel more simple, human, and enjoyable. As a child, Laura can remember her dad telling her, "If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life." Those words stuck with her through the years and impacted each choice, which resulted in her finding a career that allows her to connect with different people every day, satisfies her desire to continue learning, and leaves her with a sense of genuine fulfillment. Outside of work, Laura enjoys curling up with a good mystery novel, spending time with her family, attempting new workout classes, trying new restaurants, traveling, hitting up her favorite brunch spot with friends, or simply taking her pup Bella for a long walk. This event is being brought to you by StartOut. For those of you who are new to StartOut, StartOut is a nonprofit organization founded in 2009 that focuses on empowering LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs. StartOut's mission is to increase the number, diversity, and impact of LGBTQ entrepreneurs and amplify their stories to drive the economic empowerment of the community. In essence, StartOut is about networking, entrepreneur support, and community. If you are a founder, StartOut provides direct and visual support through mentorship, office hours, investor connections, and the StartOut Growth Lab. Consider joining StartOut by visiting www.startout.org. My name is Cindy Lamar, and I am an entrepreneurial coach, instructional designer, and storyteller who specializes in creating instructional and developmental content that ignites growth in individuals and teams. I will be your moderator for this event. If you have questions, please ask them in the chat. keeping in mind that Christopher and Laura cannot answer highly personalized questions because they truly must know someone's full money story before offering advice. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cindy, for that amazing introduction. Christopher and I are so grateful to StartOut for inviting us to speak and are really excited to be joining you all today. As entrepreneurs, you are focused on the important task of making sure that your business thrives. While that's crucial to success, we want to shift your focus just a little bit and think and talk about the financial planning on a holistic level. Our goal is to provide the information necessary to build a solid foundation for your personal financial life.
Yeah. And as Cindy noted, feel free to drop any questions that you may have, in the chat feature, and we'll do our best to integrate those into our discussion. And we're going to pause at sort of the end of each theme that we talk about today to answer any questions that may be relevant about that section that we cover. And as Cindy mentioned, if you ask us something highly personalized, such as, should I refinance my mortgage, given the current state of interest rates, we're unlikely going to not be able to answer that question, just because we need to know the full picture before we can offer guidance on such a granular topic. And really, we want this presentation to be more about education and bringing awareness to your financial planning dynamic. And so, on another note, perhaps you have a question that you'd prefer to ask offline. Do not hesitate to reach out to either of us, after the presentation. To see how we might be able to help answer, what is top of mind for you. And we're going to share a slide at the end that shows our contact information where you can go and find us.
So before we dive in, we want to share a link that will allow you to download a packet. I just dropped it into the chat. We have created a founder's personal financial plan checklist, along with a few additional exercises that we're going to be referencing a little bit later on. While both Christopher and I love talking and educating people about personal finances, we wanted to make sure that we gave you something tangible to walk away with that might make some of these topics feel a little bit more manageable. So feel free to click on the link provided, download the packet, and follow along as we go.
And so, before we dive into our discussion, we first want to set the container. And we want you to think of today's discussion sort of as a journey along a river. And, we're going to cover a lot of distance that we believe is important for founders to understand. But like most rivers, we're going to have to keep the depth of this conversation rather shallow, just out of, constraints for time. We like to use the iceberg photos shown here for symbolism because, it first highlights that we're barely scratching the surface of what personal financial planning really looks like. Even though we're going to cover a lot of topics, it's important to understand that your money story may also include some or all of the elements that are also listed on the screen. For instance, perhaps you're like myself and have outstanding student loan debt and are curious about how to best tackle that. We don't have time today to cover elements of debt management, but we do want to acknowledge that your money portrait may likely contain more pieces than what we could possibly cover in one discussion, because financial planning is truly highly personalized given your situation. And so what we did do is we first put together some broad categories that we believe are most important for every founder to be aware of, especially those that are just at the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey.
So we want to talk about what we're going to cover. First, we're going to begin with goals and values. Likely you're not surprised that we start by talking about goals, but you might be a little bit surprised to hear that we include values in that discussion. Yet this is where we start with every single person we work with. And the reason for that is that money carries your intentions, and we want to make sure that as you're crafting your money story, it's one that you can really be proud of.
Next, we're gonna meet your team. And so for meeting your team, it's really important for you to understand that not one person is going to be able to serve all of your needs. What we're going to do is highlight all the specialists that you're going to want to have in your corner that will help facilitate your financial journey.
We'll move on to cash flow management, which in our opinions is one of the most important elements of your financial situation. How you manage your money directly impacts your ability to reach your goals.
We're then going to talk about building a safety net. And really what this is all about is risk management. And this is truly where differences between, the cisgender heterosexual community and the queer community first really can begin to bubble to the surface. And we're going to have a really candid discussion about some of those topics. Then we'll go into protecting your legacy, which is really all about ensuring that your intentions are carried out should you be unable to speak for yourself. And this is another important area that is often overlooked when it comes to personal financial management.
And finally, we'll wrap up by briefly talking about the topics we're going to cover during our second presentation, which is scheduled for November 11th. So we touched on the fact that our process starts with a conversation around goals and values. Often with the speed of life, we don't always take the time to sort out what matters most to us. Sometimes it can just be a little bit easier to follow what outside influences determine is the quote unquote correct goal. And that can be reaching some magic number that will give you financial peace of mind or tells you that you can retire. However, our motto at Abacus is expanding what's possible with your money. And the way we are able to do this is through values-based planning, which is simply identifying what is most important to you and developing a strategy and creating actionable steps to meet those goals. The first step is to sit down and do an in-depth analysis to identify not only your short and long-term goals, but also prioritize what's most important to you. Doing a deep dive into your core values will help align the steps that you need to take in your career, how you spend, save, and even how you invest. Start by intentionally thinking about how your values and priorities fit into categories such as lifestyle goals, which can be how often do you want to travel? What will your lifestyle look like in retirement? Are there any big ticket items that you need to plan for, such as children's education or buying another property? Additionally, think about legacy planning. Do you want to protect your loved ones in the event something were to happen to you? How much would you like to leave behind? And finally, social values. Are there causes that are important to you? Are you charitably inclined? Are there companies that you want to make sure you are supporting with your money, or on the flip side that you're not supporting? We have included a spending priorities guide worksheet in the packet, provided along with a few examples of what might fall into each category to help facilitate this critical step. Additionally, you'll want to review your values-based goals on a regular basis to ensure that you are consistently working towards the items that are most important to you. Likely, your list of goals may change over time, and that's completely expected and relatively normal as well.
Yeah. And what I would like to add to the goals and values element is that it's really not something that you really want to gloss over. As a startup founder, you're likely working on or have already put together a pitch deck for your business. And in this pitch deck, you talk about the company mission, its vision, the problems that you hope to solve, and how your unique solution goes about solving that problem. But what we want to ask you is, have you sat down to truly ponder your own personal pitch deck? And by this we mean, what's your personal mission? What vision do you want to set for your life? What problems do you want to solve or play a hand in solving? Have you thought about what steps to take to make this vision a reality? And we start with the goals and values discussion because it really sets the tone for everything that follows. Think of this as your North Star that we're going to come back to again and again to ensure that the actions taken thereafter are really bringing to life the vision that you've set for yourself. And so we're going to pause right there and see if there's any questions that we can answer about goals and values that may have come through, or Cindy, if you have any questions for us.
Yeah, actually, how do you go about working with individuals on their goals and their values? What's your approach there?
Yeah. Laura, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, definitely. So really, I just start with kind of almost like a brain dump. We'll start going through every aspect of questions I might have, and it goes from when do you want to retire to the nitty gritty of what charities are important to you. Are there people that you need to support in your life? And really, first, I just want to make sure that we're all getting it all down on one page or a couple of pages. And then I want to go through and prioritize it. Likely, not always, but sometimes when I meet with individuals, it's not realistic to say you're going to be able to accomplish all of your goals at once. So making sure that you're working towards what's most important and also looking at the larger picture. I've worked with very generous individuals who tend to focus on, the small or one very specific topic, such as possibly, funding a child's 529 account. And I always want to bring it back and say, that's great and so very generous, but we want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success as well.
Sounds
And
good. Someone actually asked, will we be sharing the recording? I know we are recording it, and we usually have all of our events available on YouTube following um, our events. So you can check
Wonderful.
there, I guess, in a week or so. Thank you.
all right, so next is meeting your team, and you're probably asking yourself, why the heck is the cast of Queer Eye on the meeting your team slide? And a little nugget about myself: I'm actually a huge fan of the show, and wanted to use them as an example to lead the meeting your team discussion, because how the Fab Five approaches serving the needs of the entire person that they host on the show is really a great way to think about how your quote unquote financial Fab Five will ultimately approach tackling your personal financial management needs. And so, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, each of the stars on the show brings forth their own level of expertise. Anthony covers food and wine. Tan does all things fashion. Karamo is the culture expert. Bobby executes interior design, and then Jonathan covers all of their grooming needs. And so on Queer Eye, they recognize that not one individual can be everything for that one person. And ultimately, the way we want to think about tackling your personal financial management is no different. Professionals with different functional expertise will be brought in, as you navigate your personal finance journey and craft that money story. And so, what we ultimately want to lead you with is, do you have your financial Fab Five? And we're going to talk about, who we think those professionals are. So the first person you're going to want to think about having in your corner is the advisor. That's Laura, that's myself, another financial advisor that maybe you have in your life. And as someone who used to be an engineer working in oil field operations, I often like to describe our role as acting as the project manager. We work to facilitate your financial journey. This means that we know what we know and we bring to the table our own level of expertise. And on the flip side, it also means that we know what we don't know, which means, when we need someone with deep functional expertise, such as tax considerations around an acquisition, because Google's decided that they want to purchase your SaaS startup. We know to bring those professionals to the table so that they can facilitate the conversation around those specific planning nuances. So that's really the role of the wealth advisor in your financial management journey.
Another important member of your team is going to be a CPA or an accountant who performs the necessary tax planning. Outside of tax returns, which might seem pretty straightforward, but they really aren't. There are so many different ways how you can reduce your tax bill, and methods that can be utilized both on the day you're filing your tax return, but also throughout the rest of the year. As an entrepreneur, it's unlikely that you have the time to utilize such methods, yet the ability to reduce costs should not be underestimated. An accountant can support you easily by identifying potential deductions and advise you on how to make strategic decisions for year-end deductions. Many business owners tend to forget to account for items such as depreciation, out-of-pocket expenses, and home office space. We really want to make sure that no one is leaving money on the table. Accountants can help you slash your tax bill and free up money, which you can then either reinvest in your business or use for yourself later in the future. Moving on, we're going to talk about attorneys. Hiring and working with a lawyer can sometimes feel confusing, maybe even a little daunting if it's the first time you've hired an attorney, but when you're starting a business, it's crucial. With the right expertise on your side, you can feel really confident that you have your ducks in a row and you can get down to business. The most frequent times that a entrepreneur and startups might need to get lawyers involved might be at incorporation, when you're deciding which business entity to choose, during hiring, negotiating contracts, and even when raising capital. Running a business is a fast-paced endeavor in which entrepreneurs frequently experience rapid, sometimes drastic changes. And so in order for your attorney to really help you navigate those changes, it's really imperative to make sure that you're keeping them in the loop. Having a good legal counsel can be priceless and will make your life significantly easier. In addition to utilizing an attorney for business reasons, attorneys can also be used to help execute estate planning documents, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit.
The fourth member of your team that you're going to want to think about is the insurance broker. And the insurance broker is really integral to risk management and mitigation, both on the personal side of things and when trying to protect yourself at the enterprise level of your startup. They're there to act as the guide to understanding the best risk management options that are available to you. And, the insurance industry can be rather nuanced, and we're going to talk about some of this later on. So, they're going to act as the point person to help navigate these intricacies while also understanding, what are the current best practices within the insurance industry at that time. And the last person you may want to think about having on your team is a bookkeeper. And so the bookkeeper is that documentation savior that maintains accurate record keeping. And, they work to help keep track of incomes, expenditures, make sure that budgets are being kept on track. And, a bookkeeper isn't necessarily relevant to everyone, but we see this situation a lot with individuals starting businesses that they're so spread thin for time that outsourcing some of the personal administrative tasks to someone else can actually be a really huge benefit for them. And that's really it for our Fab Five. These are likely the main professionals that you may want to think about having in your corner as you navigate your personal finance journey. We do think it's important to note that you may begin to add professionals outside of these individuals as your planning needs develop, such as, adding a real estate agent or a mortgage broker should a home purchase sort of be in your future. And with that, we're going to pause and see if we have any questions on anything related to meeting your team.
Great question. I see Samir has asked, how do you get money to pay the CPA, attorneys, insurance, and broker?
Great question.
That's a great question. When we think about those professionals, it's all going to come into what we're going to talk about in just a minute, and cash flow and budgeting and really setting the container for how you think of your cash flow ins and your cash flow outs. But it's really mostly about setting a budget. Chris, anything you wanted to add?
No, I think once we get into sort of the cash flow management discussion, that's where you're hopefully going to find your ability to free up, funds to put these professionals sort of on your team.
Another question.
Yes.
Queer Global asks, what do you recommend for smaller startups that cannot afford all 5 members of the team to get the ball rolling? Which are first priority? Great question.
Cool. On a personal finance side, when it comes to some of the lawyers and what some of they do, we're going to talk about estate planning documents. Some of that you can do on your own, and some of those protections that you can do as a DIYer. And the same goes with insurances. You can do a lot of searching and using there's a lot of platforms out there that are actually really great resources that will help you navigate some of those nuances. So you don't have to necessarily hire a professional to do it for you. You can do some of the dirty work yourself. Laura, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that for a smaller startup, I would probably say, in my opinion, having a wealth advisor and a CPA are going to be your biggest, on an ongoing basis, at least, are going to be the biggest place you want to put your focus. The reason being is that you want those two individuals working together, keeping an eye on everything, keeping an eye on the business side, keeping an eye on the personal side. You might bring an attorney at the beginning to, determine which is the correct, way to incorporate or something like that. But the wealth advisor and the CPA, those should be there for the long haul and really grow as your business expands.
Cool. Another question from Alexis is, do you think there is value in using the same Fab Five for your business and personal needs?
That's a great question. I would say that yes and no. Like, for example, you don't necessarily need a CPA who specializes in taxes to do your personal tax return, but as a entrepreneur, you do want a CPA doing your business. If you're, depending on the type of entity you have created, it might be a little bit more complex. So I would say that yes and no. I mean, if you have someone who knows what they're doing on the business side of things, likely they'll probably be able to help you on the personal side as well. I would just ask those questions as you're interviewing, individuals to work with.
More just came in from Samir asking, does a startup need insurance? I am a tech startup, it says. So maybe certain kinds need it more than others. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are going to talk about insurance in just a few minutes. So we will get to that. And if we don't completely answer your question, feel free to throw it in again.
And I have one. What are
Okay.
some resources for finding these types of advisors? Any direction for where you can find great resources for these fabulous five?
Yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there. There's a website called XYPN, Garrett Planning Association. You can go to NAPFA as well, NAPFA, and search for a financial advisor, fee only financial advisor, and you'll get some great options in varying various ways they work. It could be hourly, some will be on retainer, but yeah, there's a lot of great options out there. Chris?
Yeah, you hit the ones that we like to provide. So nothing else to add.
Cool. And Tony asked something similar. I think you just answered it, but it's what are some resources from high to low touch for us to identify wealth advisors and CPAs with reasonable pricing? I think that's the important part there,
Yeah, yeah.
as they just started their business. So, did the ones that you named, do they have any reasonably priced?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
there's definitely in the chat.
Oh, the
There's
names
definitely
of the
some
orgs. Yeah.
resources. There's definitely some resources available that are more cost efficient, especially for someone just starting out. And you'll be able to see an interview to make sure that it's within your price range. There's also a site called Wealth Ramp where you can actually put in some things you're specifically looking for, and it'll match you with 3 or 4 advisors in your surrounding area if you're looking to meet in person or nationally. And it's almost like kind of like an online dating. Say you put in what you're looking for, and it's going to try to match you up with the appropriate advisor. And as far as tax accountants and all of that, off the top of my head, I don't know a specific site where you can search for them, but if you're working with a financial advisor, ask them for a recommendation. They're likely going to have some trusted individuals that they can refer to.
And I think they're wanting you to put the names of those organizations that you ran off into the chat if possible.
Yes, we will do that right at the end. I will make sure that we get all of those resources into the chat right at the end.
Great, that's it for now.
Perfect. Cool. Wonderful questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to move on to cash flow management, or setting a budget, which to us is the single most important financial habit. The reason being is that how you utilize cash flow is vital to making the best financial decisions to achieve your already established values-based goals. It can allow you to monitor where money is going, save for emergencies, pay down debt, and reach your long-term financial goals. One of the reasons why we find that actively tracking your spending on a regular basis is so important is because we find that often people know what they're spending on a regular basis or the very large purchases. So mortgage and rent, or utilities, or even your monthly gym membership. It's those one-off, highly variant expenses that might happen with little to no thought that are a little bit harder to keep track of. So without monitoring where cash flow goes, it can be very easy to allow spending to get away from you and potentially end up living beyond your means. Utilizing a budgeting software will allow you to link your bank accounts, debit and credit cards, so that all of your transactions are aggregated in one place. I like to tell my entrepreneurs to keep, expenses separate from personal and business, just to make sure that you're really able to see, the difference between the two, and you're not making plans around all of the transactions together. But once you do that, you can categorize each transaction and see how much you're really spending on those seemingly smaller purchases, such as clothing, food delivery, even nights out with friends. Sometimes the results are kind of shocking. It shocked me the first time I did it myself, but diving into your personal financial void and checking in regularly with your spending habits bring clarity on where your money is going and help you stay within your budget. And it'll just ultimately help keep you from feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, we put a lot of emphasis on cash flow management because, if we don't know where your money's going, we truly know nothing. If we don't have an idea of where you're spending your money, it's almost like driving down the 405 at 70 miles an hour with a blindfold on, which means that we're unable to plan for potential hazards that may pop up along our journey. Think of managing your cash flow as, truly coming to terms with your personal burn rate. And, burn rate's a concept you likely are familiar with or will become familiar with, as angel investors or venture capitalists invest money in your startup. They want to know your monthly burn rate to understand, how long that money will float you until you raise more capital. And so understanding your personal cash flow management is really no different. We want to help you identify your own personal burn rate so that you can begin to understand what it takes to really run your life, both on a monthly basis or an annual basis. And then once we better understand those cash flow dynamics, we can begin to gain some clarity around how feasible it may be for you to achieve the goals that you identified as being important to you in the section that we talked about before. So we're going to just pause there, see if anybody has any questions around sort of cash flow management or how to go about it.
Forgot I was on mute. We had a question come in about lawyers, and Queer Global was wondering, like, what type of lawyer? Because there are a lot of niche titles like contract lawyer, business, or tax attorney. Is there kind of like a generalist, or what type of lawyer would you recommend as a first for startups? Yeah.
I think first you're going to want a business attorney and who understands, entity structure and creating a business from the business side of things. On the personal side, we're often working with estate attorneys or tax attorneys, and you might often have a tax attorney come in on the business side who's knowledgeable about business tax. And so you're right, there are a lot of niche attorneys out there. And so it's really about, what stage or what advice that you're looking support on. So if you're just starting your business, you're going to want to look for an attorney that's, knowledgeable on, entity creation and how to make sure that you set that up properly so that you don't run into any hurdles, a year or two down the road.
Sounds good. And we have a few questions coming in about cash flow management tools. Bridget wants to know what your favorite cash flow management tools for startups and personal tracking. Sarah says, are there personal budgeting apps you recommend? Not a fan of Mint. And also, are there any free or inexpensive accounting software you recommend? Comes from Samir.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few services out there. I will admit, I tend to use mint.com. And I think Christopher probably does as well. But I've also used You Need a Budget. I know a lot of people who use QuickBooks. Both You Need a Budget and mint.com are free. You just have to sign up, create an account, and get everything linked. If either of those don't really suit you, there's a couple other options out there. Again, we'll drop the links to Mint and You Need a Budget in the comments below after we get through everything. But it's really just finding what you're most comfortable with and sticking to it. I always say the most important step is taking the first step and getting set up. But it's also making sure that it's something you're going to continue to do. So finding a software that makes you feel comfortable is really important.
For sure. I think that's it for now.
All right.
Thanks for the questions.
So we're going to move on to building a safety net. And the first thing I love to talk about is an emergency plan or an emergency fund. An emergency fund can help you prepare for the unexpected. Medical bills can come out of nowhere for you, your partner, even pets. There might be a leaky roof, a car that needs maintenance unexpectedly. Whatever it might be, life events creep up quickly and often without notice. So having an emergency fund in place is going to help you handle those moments with a little bit more clarity and feel a little bit more calm than if you have zero backup plan in place. So what is an emergency fund? It's simply a savings account that we typically recommend is kept completely separate from your checking account that you may use to pay your day-to-day bills, and from your other savings accounts that might be used to fund other goals. The standard rule of thumb is to have between 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses in your emergency fund. However, depending on your specific goals and varying other factors, it may make sense to keep a little bit more or a little bit less cash on hand. In addition to an emergency fund, there are various types of insurance, and having the appropriate insurance coverage plays a large part in building your safety net. So I'm going to quickly highlight a few of the various types of insurances available, why they might be important. And then once I get through all of that and through the basics, Christopher will discuss how navigating the insurance industry can be a little bit tricky for the LGBTQ plus community. So the first one is health insurance. No one plans to get sick or hurt, but most people need medical care at some point. And health insurance covers these costs and offers many other important benefits. Health insurance protects you from having high unexpected medical bills, that might really put a huge obstacle in front of your long-term goals. There's renters and homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance provides coverage to repair or rebuild your home after events such as fire, smoke, theft, vandalism, a falling tree, or even damage caused by weather such as wind, lightning, or hail. Likewise, renters insurance provides financial reimbursement to cover a tenant's loss or damaged possessions as a result of fire, theft, or vandalism. It also covers a tenant's liability in the event that a visitor is injured while visiting. Auto insurance is important because it's financial protection in case you get into a car accident or you damage someone else's vehicle or even injure them. Car insurance can also protect your vehicle from damage caused by an accident or some other peril, such as a falling object, fire, or theft. There are 6 common car insurance coverage options to consider, and depending on where you live, some of them might actually be mandatory by your state. Disability insurance is a big one, especially for entrepreneurs. The regular W-2 employee is going to likely have this provided by their employer. But disability insurance is a type of coverage that replaces a portion of your monthly income if injury or illness prevents you from working. It provides financial security for you and your loved ones who may depend on your most valuable asset, which is your ability to earn income. Statistics actually show that through the course of your career, you are 3.5 times more likely to be injured and need disability coverage than you are to die prematurely. In fact, according to the stats, there is no age where the risk of death is greater than the risk of becoming disabled. The truth is that death is inevitable. However, disability can be far more financially devastating if there's no planning in place. Life insurance provides a lump sum payout to designated beneficiaries after you pass. If your loved ones depend on your financial support for their livelihood, then life insurance is a must because it can be used to replace income when you pass away. In addition to replacing income, it can be used to cover big expenses and outstanding debts such as mortgage, credit cards, and even car loans. Other expenses to include are funeral costs that can easily run to tens of thousands of dollars. You don't want your partner or loved ones to be left with any extra financial burden in addition to the emotional burden they're already suffering. So you likely have heard of all the other insurances I just covered, but you might not have heard of umbrella insurance. Umbrella insurance is extra insurance that provides protection beyond existing limits and beyond existing coverage of other policies. It can provide coverage for injuries, property damage, certain lawsuits, and personal liability situations. You want to keep in mind that not everyone is going to be eligible to purchase umbrella coverage. For example, if you do not own a home or a car and have those insurance coverages, you might not be able to qualify for this insurance.
So, now that Laura has sort of led us through the types of insurances that we think, should be sort of on your radar in order to build your safety net, I wanted to provide sort of the queer perspective on some of the hurdles that our community should be aware of when it comes to navigating the insurance landscape. And it's especially, on the personal insurance side. The first one to think about is, normal triggering events occur later. And so, what do we mean by these triggering events? They are, marriage, buying a home, having children, among other instances when the conversation around insurance really comes into play for your financial journey. And the reality for the queer community is that, many of these normal triggering events are happening later in life. And so, waiting for these traditional events to occur to have the insurance conversation, will cause the cost of your policy to rise exponentially because premiums for insurance are linked with age. And, as a result, you will likely be paying much higher premiums than those who fall outside of the queer community that happen to get married earlier or bought a home sooner, which allow them to, lock in insurance policies at a much younger age. Another item to be aware of is language hurdles. And, as language is really key within the queer community. The queer language dictionary is rather vast, and we love to express ourselves in countless ways, but one should understand that the insurance industry tends to be somewhat conservative and slow to respond to social change. And what this means is that when you navigate the insurance process, you may be boxed into types of identities that fully don't express how you really see yourself, which leads me to the next point. Gender-based underwriting. When you go to fill out insurance application paperwork, you will almost certainly have to apply as either male or female to get a policy. It is unlikely from what we've seen that you'll be able to identify yourself as non-binary. And additionally to this, some insurance carriers will require you to use the gender assigned to you at birth, even if you've fully transitioned. And on the point of gender, it's important to note that gender will affect the cost of insurance for you. For life insurance, males tend to pay higher premiums than females. For disability insurance or long-term care, it's the reverse. Females tend to pay more for their policies than males do. Another observation that I want to bring up is, and I'm speaking to the transgender founders that might be joining us today, is that we've seen insurance companies really lock down on the benefit period that they may cover as part of your insurance policy. For instance, some providers are capping disability benefits at 5 years while also adding an additional premium charge to reflect just general uncertainty that they believe exists around transgender applicants. And last, I want to talk about insurability considerations, and this is a big one. The Affordable Care Act made it that you could not be denied health insurance due to pre-existing conditions. And unfortunately, that same protection does not extend to life or disability insurance. And I'm going to talk about myself as an example here. You may not know it by looking at me, but I'm currently living with HIV. And with advances in modern medicine, I can lead a long life largely unaffected by it. However, as you might imagine, my HIV status has really hindered my ability to benefit from many of the protections that insurance can provide. And it's not just having HIV, it's pre-existing conditions can come in many forms, whether it's, those associated with mental health, or even now COVID-19. We'll have to see how the insurance industry treats those who came down with COVID, and as a result, you too might be unable to benefit from some of the insurances that we've discussed as a result of just not being insurable in the eyes of the insurance carrier. And, what we ultimately want to leave you with, sort of by sharing my journey as a queer man navigating the insurance landscape, is this. If you happen to be boxed out from some of the protections that insurance can provide, such as life insurance or disability insurance, know that it's not the end of your financial journey. All it really means is that your journey slightly changes course, as we bring greater focus to other parts of your financial plan, just to ensure that you are protected via alternative planning routes. And, that's the real value of meeting with a financial advisor such as myself or Laura. We can help you find alternative ways to build your safety net should traditional options not be available to you, just like they're not available to me. And so we're going to pause there because we threw a lot at you in terms of different insurances that you may want to consider. And so we want to answer any questions that you may have on that. And Cindy, did you happen to fall off briefly and then came back? I don't know what that was.
Yeah, it fell hard, man. I don't know what happened to my Wi-Fi. I had to shut down and come back up, and I don't see anything in the chat, so I'm not sure if people had questions that I don't see now. But if you do have questions about insurance, please put them in there.
Yeah, and we have time at the end too for if we miss them, we can come back to it. So
yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. I'll look at the recording for that section.
And just to go back to the one question from earlier about does a startup need insurance? It is one of the reasons that we do recommend you work with a financial advisor who has expertise in working with small business owners and startups and entrepreneurs. The reason being is that there are different types of insurances that are required depending on the type of service you offer in your business. So some businesses might need personal liability protection. Some businesses might need errors in operations insurance. There's a lot of insurances out there that may or may not apply to you. And it's just really important to make sure that you're protecting yourself in the event that something were to happen.
And a question did just come in from Bridget. She says, is there a financial planning application or platform that walks a user through all of this stuff, like a checklist or step-by-step projects, etc.? If not, please make one.
Well, what's
Get
funny
that
is like,
development out.
well, what's funny is the user guide that we created sort of is a little bit of that checklist guide, and I don't know if maybe that wasn't seen, and we're going to share it again at the end. But that's a good observation. Maybe we can start a company around that. There's an idea.
Yeah, we have a tech startup in our audience. I don't know, maybe there's a possible collaboration there. Who knows? You
No,
know,
yeah,
it's all
totally.
about community.
I like it. Uh, Anything else?
That's all I see right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Bridget.
Okay, so we're going to move on to protecting your legacy. Unfortunately, we're reminded far too often these days that life can change in the blink of an eye. And while it can seem pretty grim to plan for your death when you're in the prime of your life, it's also important, responsible, and incredibly helpful for your loved ones. In addition to discussing a few important estate planning items, we also included an end of life planning checklist as part of our founders financial plan packet. So that would be on the last page. So wills and trusts. A will is a legal document that states how your money and property will be distributed after you pass away. It's really important to have as it allows you to communicate your wishes on how your assets should be handled in a very clear and precise manner. Additionally, if you do have minor children, it's absolutely essential that you name a guardian in your will, because if you don't name one in your will, then the guardian of the minor child, that decision falls to the courts and the legal system, who obviously won't know what you really prefer in that situation. So it's the number one thing I always recommend is make sure that legal guardianship is spelled out in your will. A trust is a fiduciary arrangement that allows a third party, otherwise known as a trustee, to hold assets on behalf of a beneficiary. Trust can be arranged in many different ways, and they can specify exactly how and when the assets pass to the beneficiary. Since trusts typically avoid probate, your beneficiaries will likely gain access to those assets faster than if it just goes through your will. Additionally, depending on the type of trust that you establish, for example, an irrevocable trust, it may not be considered part of your taxable estate, which means fewer taxes due when you pass.
The next document you're going to want to think about having in order to protect your legacy is an advanced healthcare directive. And so what this is it's a legal document that indicates the specific medical care someone over the age of 18 wants or does not want to happen, in the event that they're unable to make decisions for themselves. And, you can think of this advanced directive as allowing you to express your values and desires related to end-of-life care. This means expressing your wishes to decisions that might come up related to the use of CPR or ventilator use, artificial nutrition, and comfort care sort of in the last moments of life.
There's also power of attorneys, which is a legal document that allows you to appoint an agent to act on your behalf. The agent is expected to place your interests ahead of their own, which is why it's really important to choose someone that you trust unconditionally. There are multiple types of decisions that an agent may be able to make, which can be making financial decisions, gifting money, even making healthcare decisions, including the ability to consent to giving, withholding, and stopping medical treatments. There are 4 different types of power of attorneys, each that you can really get, each with its own unique purpose. So in order to ensure that your wishes are being followed, it's really important to understand what each option means. So the first one is general power of attorney. In this situation, the agent can perform almost any act on your behalf, which includes opening financial accounts and managing your personal finances. A general power of attorney arrangement is terminated if you become incapacitated, revoke the power of attorney, or pass away. So I always like to stop right here and say, the main takeaway about general power of attorney is that the person you give that to has the ability to make decisions on your behalf, even if you're capable of making those decisions. So, before you go and get a general power of attorney, really think about what you're trying to accomplish. A durable power of attorney This is an arrangement that is similar to a general power of attorney. So it's all the same things we just covered, except that it includes a clause that maintains that power of attorney in the event you become incapacitated. Which really, when you're thinking about power of attorney, is when you want that person to step in, right? When you can make your own decisions, you don't necessarily need that person on the sidelines. But once you're unable to make those decisions, that's when it's important to have that in place. There's also special or limited power of attorney. So in this instance, the agent has specified powers limited to a very specific area. So for example, it might mean that the agent has the authority to sell a home or other piece of real estate. And the last one to cover is a springing durable power of attorney. This is one that I would probably prefer that most people get, because it's a power of attorney that states that an agent gets the power in the event that a specific event occurs, such as if you were to become incapacitated. The main difference is that right now, not all states offer springing durable powers of attorney. So if that is the case, using a general power of attorney might be your only option at the moment. ICE contact information. So ICE stands for in case of emergencies. And in today's technological era, medical providers such as paramedics, nurses, doctors are increasingly aware of and using ICE, specifically through someone's cell phone, to look up and notify someone's emergency contacts and obtain critical medical information if a patient were to arrive unconscious or unable to answer questions.
The next aspect of protecting a legacy is designating your beneficiaries. And this is sort of a low-hanging fruit that some people often miss. When you create an account, whether it's a savings account, retirement account, purchase a life insurance policy, one of the more important details to consider is the naming of a beneficiary or beneficiaries on that account or policy. And so, what this does is it helps eliminate confusion as to who you ultimately want to have inherit the assets once you pass away. And by naming a beneficiary on all of your accounts, you leave no doubt as to who you wish and what you want to be done with your money or your insurance proceeds. Another reason you want to name your beneficiaries is that it saves time. If you pass away and you've not named a beneficiary, this will delay the transfer of whatever funds are in those accounts, because now the government has to get involved through a process called probate. And in some instances, the delay caused by going through probate can be significant and require the person in charge of your affairs, whether it's the executor or trustee, it could to just complete a lot of paperwork that ultimately will require a significant amount of time and potentially a significant amount of money in order to make those changes done. The last reason why you want to think about naming your beneficiaries is that it also helps ensure the financial wellness of your loved ones. This is particularly important when it comes to life insurance proceeds, where the main goal is to provide money for a particular purpose, whether that's funeral expenses, replacing income of a breadwinning partner, paying for a child's education, paying off a mortgage, among other needs that life insurance can help. And the last item that we want you to consider, when trying to protect your legacy is developing a digital asset form. And this is sort of new. This is meant to capture your online fingerprint so that someone can access your accounts if the need arises. Your digital asset form could be as basic as documenting your usernames and passwords on a piece of paper, and then safely storing that in a location where your agent knows where to find it. Or if you prefer the digital option, we really like 1Password to store online login and other digital credentials. That's what I use to store all of my digital information in that digital footprint. And if you take this route, just be sure to share your master password with that one person who may need to tap into that virtual vault on your behalf in the future. And so we're going to pause there and see if there's any questions that have come up around any of those topics we talked about in protecting your legacy.
I don't see any in the chat. If anybody has any questions, now's the time. Does that also include LastPass? Is that a digital asset form? Is that the same thing? Are you familiar with LastPass?
No.
It sounds like what you just described as 1Password, where you put in all of your passwords and accounts. But it's for general stuff, not just financial. I
Yeah.
see. Let's see. It looks like there's a question in the Q&A. Oh, someone asked you to repeat what ICE stands for. Tosh.
It stands for in case of emergency. So if you go to your cell phone, there's actually a way to designate a specific contact as your in case of emergency. And the cool thing about it is that even if your phone is locked, because you might be thinking, if my phone's locked, they're never going to be able to call anyone. But if you designate someone in your phone as your in case of emergency contact, even if the phone is locked, they'll still be able to contact them. I also love putting, like I have allergies and certain other things. I mean, all of that is in my kind of medical thing, because I do know that it's being looked at more and more when people show up unable to communicate with a doctor or a nurse, but has their cell phone on them.
Cool. We have a question again from Queer Global. What was the second type of power of attorney that you listed? Um,
So the second type of power of attorney was a durable power of attorney. So that is the one where it's like general power of attorney, except it contains the clause that states that in the event you are incapacitated, the power of attorney stays. So they still have the ability to act on your behalf. If you remember, just a regular general power of attorney stops and is completely terminated if you are to become incapacitated. Um,
we'll say this is so helpful. Thanks for doing this. That comes from Faith. And I think you said there was I'm not sure what the right word was. It springing?
Springing,
Springing?
yes. So
Like
it's a
spring?
yeah, yep. Like almost
Okay.
like a diving board has a spring. So it's
Yeah.
kind of the thought that if something happens, it goes into effect. Again, that's the one that not every state currently has. It's the one I think is the most, if I was going to, set my power of attorneys up, and I have, that's the one I'd be looking for, right? Because I don't necessarily need someone to make decisions on my behalf. But if something were to happen to me where I can't make those decisions, that's when I would want that to go in effect. So it's pretty easy to figure out if your state, has that option available. Again, if not, durable power of attorney is probably where you're going to fall.
Great. Thank you. This is super helpful. Anybody else have any questions? I guess about anything at this point. If you think back over this wonderful event, do you have any questions that are hanging out? Oh, wait, let me see. There's something over here. No, that's the other one. Okay, good. I think we've answered all that are in so far.
Okay. And just one other, again, I'll add this. I've been creating a list of resources to put in the chat once we're completely done. But one resource for affordable estate planning documents that might be helpful is LegalZoom. It's a great option if you don't need, complex estate planning documents. It's relatively inexpensive. It's great for someone who enjoys doing things themselves. And we'll include the link in the comments later on.
And I'll add one more to that that we've been starting to use for do-it-yourselfers. It's trustandwill.com. It's all one word. And it's similar to LegalZoom. And we found it to be really useful for people who want to go through it themselves and are willing to, don't see the need to hire an estate attorney to sort of walk them through those documents. And it's another great resource to sort of knock out a lot of these documents that we talk about in order to protect your legacy. And then, all right, we'll continue on.
So we really covered a lot of information today. And I always joke with my clients that like normally the number one time someone comes up with a question is the second we walk out the door. But hopefully you'll walk away with a few tips and tricks to help build a solid foundation in your financial life. However, as we talked about at the beginning, we just covered the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more that we could talk about and we love talking about. So we'd love for you to join us on November 11th when we're going to cover long-term planning goals. Specifically, how do you plan as an entrepreneur and having your start out for retirement? So we're going to walk through how to utilize your company as a potential retirement asset and the various saving options available to entrepreneurs, which we're going to refer to as your savings toolkit, including what makes each option so attractive. Additionally, we're going to discuss the non-salary compensation you might receive, such as equity and stock options. So we'd love to have you join us. Hopefully you can all be there, and we'll be there to answer your questions as well.
And just in case you joined us late, we wanted to include this again to show the resource that we had put together for everybody sort of as a takeaway from today's discussion. We know we covered a lot and we wanted you to be able to go back and have something to reference, as you maybe check off some of the items that we mentioned. So we put together what we're calling, a founder's personal financial plan that you can download by visiting the link on this slide. And hopefully we can drop that link into the chat box again. The PDF also includes the spending priorities guide and sort of the end of life planning checklist that we reference as part of this one pager. If you want to connect with us after this, feel free to reach out to us either, on LinkedIn. You can find us on Twitter or, our Abacus website, and our emails are also on this slide. We can drop them into the thread if you want to ask us a question offline that we can maybe help add some color around. And with that, we will take any other additional questions, Cindy, that you have seen come through.
Yeah, let's see. We're getting a lot of thank yous. Tony says, say hi to Chris. He's also a Drexel alum. Yeah, Drexel in the house. I actually taught at Drexel for a few years back
No
in the day
way.
when I lived in Philly. Yeah. I used to teach English as a second language. So some resources are, I know, right? We probably are. A bunch of resources are popping in here, folks. So before you skedaddle, grab them. We've got links to financial advisors, budgeting software, estate planning, all kinds of great stuff. Don't forget, there's a part 2. I can't wait for that one. Go deep into that retirement planning. So very cool stuff. Thank you so much, Laura and Christopher. Anybody, last chance for questions on part 1, unless you want to reach out to them individually.
Wonderful. We had so much fun doing this. Again, we love talking about these topics. We're excited to come back for part 2. Hopefully you'll come prepared with a lot of questions. It's a fun topic for us. So we can't wait to join you. And thank you again for, having us today.
Oh, it was our pleasure. StartOut loves things that support our LGBTQ entrepreneurs. And like she said, part 2 is coming. Keep an eye out on LinkedIn and other places where you get your information about our events. We're also on Eventbrite. So if you're not sure if there's something coming up, you can check us out there. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope you learned a lot. Good luck with your businesses and your personal finances, and hope to see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Be well.
Bye.